Grobbulus is my prototype for an army of giants.
On Grobbulus, the North American RP PvP server, we've got our fair share of events, including World PvP events. On November 4th, 2019, a massive alliance assault on Undercity took place. Look at this army, it is huge. I estimated around 300 players participated from the alliance side. Even in Ironforge, with characters walking slowly and not using spells for the most part, you can see lag creeping in. Not major problems, but the characters are already starting to jump around a bit. I'll pause this for a moment to point out the tomfoolery of the Alliance being unable to coordinate flights. Seriously, I was laughing my butt off watching this unfold. I kid you not, they were bottlenecked here for well over 10 minutes, and they were barely trickling out one by one. Truly a shining example of Alliance ingenuity. So, Ironforge. Moderate lag problems, but not game breaking. I personally was hyped to see what's gonna happen in Undercity when this Alliance army arrives. A flight to South Shore and a swim through Lordomere Lake and the Alliance were knocking on Undercity's front door. However, things took a nosedive inside of Undercity. A really deep nosedive. You don't need me to explain what's going on here. Look for yourselves. Characters ghosting in and out of existence. Some people are just flying off on their own. Multiple people running in place. I was experiencing something like a 5 to 15 second lag on usage of any of my abilities. This lag lasted a very long length of time. It was about 45 minutes, and it only really subsided as people started to leave. So, about 20-30 minutes into this raid, Lady Sylvanas was slain, rest in peace, and people began to disperse. But not before players in Undercity appeared to all get booted from the game. The server itself didn't go down, and no one outside of Undercity reported a disconnect as far as anyone I spoke to, but all of us in Undercity were booted. It seemed as though our last 10 to 15 seconds of action were never recorded by the game, and from our perspective it appeared we, quote-unquote, rolled back slightly. Essentially, any actions we took in that last bit of time, including using consumables, never registered with the game, but the entire disconnect was localized to those in Undercity. How can something this bad happen in Classic only a few days before the launch of Phase 2, which will assuredly bring with it massive scale world PvP? It's not the disconnect that is the most concerning to me, but rather the delayed responses for actions and characters sliding around. At the end of the day, all anyone did was run into a room full of laggy characters and drop area of effect attacks, with a particular shout out to Consecration Spam really destroying the Horde. However, any sort of 1v1 combat was essentially impossible, and it seemed like you were just randomly attacking into thin air whenever you tried to hit someone. So there are 4 factors that play into what we perceive as server lag. The player's computer, the game's code, the internet connection of the player, and the distance or ping to the host server, and finally, the capabilities of the host servers themselves. Let's quickly look at these one by one. I'll note I am not an IT professional nor a game developer, so I encourage you to not take what I say as gospel. I'm just providing insight based on what I consider to be the basic logic of how the internet works. What changed between Ironforge and Undercity to go from a slight lag fest in Ironforge to essentially non-playability in Undercity? Well, first, my computer didn't change. It's a high-end PC that crushed Classic. My CPU and GPU usage were not pushed to the max even on a single core. The number of players on screen wasn't drastically higher in Undercity, and even with all the visual effects, my system was not under heavy load. I double-checked this by dropping my settings down significantly, and I still experienced the same lagginess. It's not my PC's limitation, given that this problem occurred with everyone that I spoke to. The game's code certainly didn't change between the 2 zones, but it is possible that the game has some inefficiencies that cause problems under a heavy load, such as when a lot of characters in a small location all send actions at the same time. Perhaps a limitation of batching, only allowing a certain number of actions to pass through each batch. This may cause some sort of built-in queue where multiple batches have to process before it gets down far enough for your action to come up to its spot in the list. This isn't a vanilla client anymore. We're on a modern WoW client that may not be quite up to snuff to handle large 500 plus player world PvP events. If this is an inherent problem with the game's design, there is probably very little hope for a fix before Phase 2 launches, in my opinion. Regarding the internet connection, my ping to the host server was around 40 to 43 milliseconds. This was consistent in Ironforge and Undercity. When speaking to a few other players, even people located closer to the host server with probably a 15 to 20 millisecond ping, they claimed to have the same issues that I experienced. This does not seem to be an issue related to the server distance or connection speed, ping, or latency of the individual player. If that were the case, there'd be very little a player could do anyway, besides getting a better internet connection or relocating closer to Blizzard servers in Chicago or the West Coast. However, I really do not think this was related to a connection problem or a lack of low latency. This brings us to the last point, the Blizzard game servers themselves. My hunch is that this is the primary problem. I'm certainly not alone in that speculation, based on recent posts on Reddit, the official forums, and other YouTube videos. Information on how classic servers are arranged is sparse, to say the least, but based on the Undercity only crash, I'm beginning to wonder if there aren't different servers or containers dedicated to major cities, separate from instance servers or servers for open world zones. Previously, I assumed that any open world zone, including major cities, all existed on the same servers. I'm not so sure that's true anymore. If the servers are the problem, there is a possibility that Blizzard could upgrade their servers or distribute server loads to more servers of the same hardware. For example, they could add more servers to help hold up the bigger raid targets: Undercity, Orgrimmar, Ironforge, Stormwind. All of these are major targets for world PvP, and if you throw in Crossroads, South Shore, Terran Mill, I think Blizzard could shore up some of the server weaknesses at some of the more vulnerable world PvP targets. Again, this is assuming this is a problem based on the servers, and it's assuming that the servers could be upgraded in a manner that would allow a resolution for this problem. At the end of the day, even though I had a blast during this world PvP raid, it's apparent that something is lacking, making Classic not ready for the prime time that will be the world PvP shenanigans of Phase 2. I suspect it's too late for Blizzard to do anything about this, if they even had an interest in doing anything in the first place, but I'm crossing my fingers that something is done to provide us with a stable experience so we can truly live up to the war in the world of Warcraft. At the very least, we can hope for something to happen at least by Phase 3 or 4, so at some point during Classic's life cycle, we can experience true, massive world PvP without this kind of shoddy, glitchy, character warping lagginess. With Phase 2 right around the corner, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Are you excited for Phase 2 even with the lag concerns? As always, a quick thanks to my Patreon supporters, especially Luke D, Chris S, and Timothy B. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.